Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again with a pretty large update on the Sweep Voidforge Scion, Inquisitor Pathfinder type character. Now, it was previously hypothesized or theorized to be using the No Helm Dance with the Dead passive from the Maraketh Brutal Restraint Timeless Jewels, and that did work out rather well. But I just had to do a bunch of toying around with other options, namely the Abyssus option, because that's the number one helmet to replace the no helm slot. And it just seems to be a far superior setup. We got a lot more life in the build while maintaining a similar amount of damage, and all in all, you end up being roughly as durable as you were before without the helm. To achieve this, I did have to put on some Kaom's roots because my boot slot wasn't really currently doing anything, just giving me LE weakness, but it wasn't actually adding any life to the slot at all, and that means that I didn't actually gain any gem sockets, unfortunately, but didn't really need them too much because I managed to cut out the LE weakness blasphemy from the build, and all in all, it ends up being a pretty smooth playstyle. Character has a very jump into one-shot sort of playstyle, and a solid amount of life up to, you can go up to 7,500 or so. I think mine currently has 7,200, and it was taking on my deepest delves, which is at this point pretty deep, of 500-ish, 450 to 500, and some really nasty mods. And that can be a bit of a problem because you see that Sweep has this sort of delay to it. It's something you kind of get used to after playing it for a bit, but it's very noticeable to begin with. You kind of right-click, have your sweep go out, and then the damage goes out just a split second after. You do get used to it, but it can put you into some dangerous situations, especially during these tougher and meatier delves where things can hit immensely hard. But we've got 3 endurance charges, 7k life, perma fortify pretty much, as well as some good flask sustain, or rather infinite flask sustain, decent leech, all kinds of stuff that actually makes us a fairly durable experience. And the biggest thing that ends up getting you on this type of character is still Maraketh Legions with very bad mods, because sometimes they can get their attacks off well before you can. But you can still take plenty of hits, and for the most part, it's really not that big a deal. But fair warning, we are still wearing Abyssus, so the really tough Maraketh Legions can actually do some serious damage. However, Endgame, the Guardians, the Uber Elder, the 5-Way Legion, none of that posed any real threat or any sort of trouble, and this sweep was definitely the biggest, chunkiest hits I've ever experienced. Some of the stuff out there just gets straight up damn near one shot, and with the large amount of hits that we're dealing, like 1.5 million hits, up to 2 million sometimes, you are getting the full effect of your shock in on some of these bosses too. I've got a clip of the Uber Elder and 5-Way Legion after I go over a few of the changes in the build, and you can see that Uber Elder gets just about insta-phased on every single phase, and the 5-Way Legion, some of those mobs get, or bosses get, straight up one shot. And it's a pretty satisfying thing to experience. So Voidforge comboed with Sweep, or I guess Cyclone, since it's all about that flat fizz, is actually pretty insane, and I do recommend looking into it, especially if nothing gets changed next patch. So to go over just a few of the main changes, currently level 92 and a half, and the main change is that I did slap on Abyssus. Now, the no-helm version definitely works, and you can try it out yourself. It ends up being probably a similar amount of damage, but I think the Abyssus just sort of route allows me to go a bit more life-heavy, and also frees up a few passive points, because with the Dance with the Dead, you do have to invest at least 4 passive points here, which can be rerouted to life or certain other things. And overall, having Kaom's roots as part of the build means that we don't have to worry about getting frozen, chilled, or stunned, which is actually kind of a big deal when you're doing this sort of leap and then sweep sort of playstyle. You do occasionally get stunned, and as well as that, we aren't completely immune to freeze because we don't always have the consecrated ground underneath us, but it's almost always there if you're using the sulfur flask. Instead, drop the sulfur flask and then start running the diamond flask as is usual, and then slapped Abyssus in. Got 3 endurance charges, actually have a decent amount of damage reduction now, just from pure passive tree endurance charges. as well as grabbing a transcendent flesh, which managed to upgrade myself through the use of the temple, and then just focused a bit more onto the life nodes, and as well as that, chucked in a different lethal pride or timeless jewel. This one's not anything particularly special, just 30 crit there, 30 crit there, 30 crit there, and a bit of leech, which we didn't actually need at this point. Another big kind of thing I did end up reworking a bit is grabbing a pure talent, corrupted with area. So you can see we go to the Marauder area and start at the Templar area as well as the Sign area. So we get 25 stats from Sign area, we get 15 area from Templar, making this jewel give us 19% area and also 5% damage from the Templar start, thanks to the 5% penetration. Through doing that, I did drop Brinksmanship, which is kind of a weak few nodes, but I wanted to make up the area while grabbing it. So dropped these, went this way through the life, ended up getting the same amount of area, better damage, and a good use of a jewel slot. Tried to replace another jewel with a bit of attack speed and crit multi, made sure I filled out some accuracy and crit, and all in all, I think the build is fairly well rounded this way, and it's actually pretty nice playing a Scion in this context, because you do have something like 55 to all res, I think, before even putting on gear. So it makes actually gearing for resists really not that hard. Got one resist there, none. The base resist on that, and one resist here, and one small resist here. It makes gearing pretty simple, or you can go for more offensive items. Otherwise, you've got some cheap ass shit. This ring was 5C, this amulet was 20C, I think. This belt I just crafted myself for a bit of flask utility, but you can go in many different directions with belts. You know, the combs are nothing, the gloves are really simple, just a little bit of multi-mod action. The Abyssus is nothing, you know, and it all comes down to the chest, which, as I mentioned, not even sure it's the right move. Probably better off going Slayer and then ignoring the whole crit situation, and Maim itself is nothing too special either. It may end up paying off to look into things like a Shroud of the Lightless or a Law Weave, just for certain comfort for defensive or offensive purposes. Never actually got a really corrupted Voidforge in the end, just a 6 white one, which I ended up putting both War Chief and Leap Slam into, and the other adjustment there is my Leap Slam is now a 5 link with Rage attached. Now it's going to be pretty rare that you actually have 50 Rage stacks, but you get to like 20, 30 quite often through maps, and it just makes mapping a little bit nicer, a little bit smoother, but you don't really have to have Rage attached, and you don't really need a 5 or even a 6 linked Voidforge. You could easily just grab you know, any kind of Voidforges, corrupt them until you get a desired outcome, and then change the sockets based to what you need. Or you can run a Combs chest altogether and get rid of the boots, and there's a bit of fine tuning you can run with a build like this. It's pretty easy and loose to gear. This is just my version, and holy shit, check out the 5-way and the Uber Elder coming, because you can see just how potent Voidforge damage is without anything too serious or too special in the other slots of gear. It's basically just Voidforge paired with Sweep or Cyclone additional fizz. It gets pretty crazy. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. I think it's risky though, the playstyle. So there are possibilities of death. And a reason that it should be okay is that you can push the phases with like a one-shot. But the playstyle of just like having a sweep and being fucking balls deep melee in their face, it's terrible. Pretty good.
Milady.
And I also get to like regen flasks pretty commonly. Do they respawn? They do respawn now. Huh. Weird. Alright. Could have got double tapped there if I wasn't careful. I actually haven't used comb roots in this fight in I don't even know how long at this point. Oh man. Mistimed the shit out of that. Slaps. Dude, you're dead. Stop killing attacks. Oh. Good deeps. Good crispy deeps. Anyway, he's a little sad with Ruthless though, isn't he? Very nice. Oh shit. 2 additional impale? Double Purity of Ice synergy? That's money right there. All the Pride Purity of Ice builds. Right. Lol. 15 exalts for 1 mod. Must be a pretty balanced mod. Has there ever been a more insane mod? One singular mod on a Watcher's Eye worth 15 exalts. Alrighty. Let's get the shot right. Oh, that's a sweep. You thought you knew sweep. It's so teeny though compared to the previous ones. Make sure I'm killing all of these. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe straight up not worth using Conk Effect. I think the deeps are good enough to not need to. So I might just be shafting myself with that Conk for clear. Fuck you, dude. So I'm not running Pulverize either this way. Probably got to change either Pulverize or Conk. I have to do one of the two, right? For maximum clear speed. These ruthless crits, dude. Pretty ruthless, if you ask me. We freeze them a lot of the time, too. The bosses. Full freeze, full shocks.
Milady.
No, he's not allowed to do that again. The last attack he did before was statues. He just goes in on statue mode again. It's all about them ruthless crits. Thanks, Ultra Mind Force for 13 month resub. Reckless doing big hits. Look at that! Jesus. This is the highest burst I've had this league. Like, undeniably, right? Bigger than Blade Flurry, bigger than Shock Nova, bigger than Smite. The right tap is basically a one tap. What's happening over there? Feels like I'm not hitting that one. Yeah, everyone sleeps on Voidforge, I guess. Yeah, I mean, realistically, you want this to be a good 5-way killer. You could very, very easily just swap in Cyclone. And it'll probably kill just as fast. It just won't be the really big, fun one-taps, you know? Which is what I'm here for. Hi Melly, thanks for the 7-month resub. Yeah, no. Gotta reset again.
Milady.
Dink. Dink. A steel ring? No way. And Immortal Hope. So,
Milady.
86 steel ring and Immortal Hope. Big money. Twice enchanted. Oh shit, yeah, I gotta run one of those eventually. 20 calls somewhere. Another twice enchanted. Heavy track. Stack decks! Skullcan, thanks for 41 minutes up. What are you? 86 two-tone? That's money, isn't it? I think those are actual money. 180 for those. Fire and cold are the big money. Not that. That. 2 exalts! There you go, chat. 2 exalts back off of this crap fucking base. They said it couldn't be done. They said you couldn't profit off of a 5-way. No matter how lucky you got. Take that, haters.